Welcome to the first episode of Unlock HR with the D'Souza sisters. In this podcast, we hope to help small business owners create great places to work, navigate the complexities of HR, and ultimately build profitable businesses. Since this is our very first episode, we'd like to start maybe with a little introduction. So I'm Desma D'Souza.
And I'm Elrona Silva D'Souza.
And if you haven't figured out already, we are the D'Souza sisters. Like I said, this is our very, very first episode. So what we want to do today is just start with the basics. We'll demystify the basics of HR for you and, sort of create a guide as to how we can simplify HR for your business. Does that sound
fair? I think we're got the first episode topic right.
Yeah, agreed. Right. So let's just get right to it.
Okay.
So to give you a bit of context, in our business, Elrona looks after the delivery of all of the HR services and oversees the delivery of all of the HR services to our clients. So I'm going to be very conveniently putting her in the hot seat today, and I'll ask the questions. And Elrona?
I shall try and give some answers.
Fantastic. So let's start with, why does HR actually matter in a small business?
Yes. So let's start with the big one, the why HR matters. So small businesses are heavily reliant on the talent of their organization, which is their primary asset of helping them sustain and grow the business. So the focus on nurturing that talent, managing that talent becomes all the more important. And why HR matters? Because it helps in many ways. It helps protect the company. It helps see what the best interests of the employees are. And while it's being protected, it helps the owners or the leading management to focus on growing the business rather than worrying about how to firefight or how to react to a situation.
Yeah.
So this is why the whole function of HR kind of helps protect that talent, nurture that talent, and grow that talent, so that grows the business.
Absolutely. But we always hear a lot of business owners say, we're too small for HR. We don't really need HR right now.
Yeah.
What do you have to say to them?
Yeah, I think that's a first reaction where they want to find a way to just get clients or get business, and then we'll look at the housekeeping side. HR is not about housekeeping. HR is to help set that foundation so that you can get more clients. If you don't have your house in order, how are you going to invite clients to experience your product?
Yeah.
You're in a way bringing them into your world and telling them that you can solve your problem. You can only solve a problem outside when your problems are taken care of.
Right.
And HR helps that. That is the conduit for that.
And remember we had this one client who had one employee.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about what happened there.
Yeah. So very interestingly, this company and this owner was all set, got his license, got the office and everything, and suddenly realized, I actually need another person. So went into his friends and family network and said, look, I need to hire.
Yeah.
Do you know anybody? And yes, talent is always available in this referral segment. So somebody showed up, did the simple interview and said, yeah, I just need somebody so I can get the ball going. And yeah, that's when it happened. They got the paperwork sorted, and within 1 month, they realized this person's not a good fit. And because the law provides for a probationary period, so this employer, the entrepreneur, said, okay, I'll terminate under probation, and I'll find a replacement talent. But within that month, not only did he end up recruiting, trying to onboard somebody, and then had to fire this person. So entire life cycle happened in 1 month.
Yeah.
And to top it all, this person, although was terminated in probation, and you can terminate for whatever reason, still went and had complained at MOHRE. So after doing all of this person, instead of talking to clients, was talking to MOHRE.
Yeah.
And trying to put his house back in order. So after that, he literally swore never to take HR, lightly or or dismiss it as being something that is a nice to have, because he realized how critical it was for his business. Got in contact with us, asked us to source this position, started, and now, that person's with them for 3 years already.
Yeah. And, like, think about the expense of, there's the stress of managing that entire life cycle of one employee in 1 month.
Yes.
But there's also the stress of you're just starting your business and someone's complained to MOHRE already. So, okay, for people who don't know what MOHRE is, what can you tell us what MOHRE is?
So MOHRE is a short form. It's an acronym for Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratisation. This is the governing body that manages all labor relations and protects businesses and labor, which is your employees, your workers, and so on, and make sure that the law and employers are compliant with what the law provides for hiring and working with manpower, like talent.
And is it the same across Mainland and Freezone, or how does it make a difference?
Yeah, there's a slight nuance to it. So when you're a Mainland company, which is directly connected with Dubai Economic Department, then you have a direct relationship with MOHRE. So you have a file with them, they have an account of yours, they know how many employees you have, etc. When you're a free zone company, you have to work through the free zone. So the free zone becomes the intermediary, and the free zone is your first point of reference for handling such situations before it goes into MOHRE and the labor codes.
Yeah. And then, so speaking of MOHRE, just to kind of build on that a little bit, right? We know that there's a difference between labor and immigration.
Correct.
But this is not common knowledge. So can you just expand on that a little more?
So whenever you have to think about it, when you hire somebody, you have actually behind the scenes 4 government institutions that work hand in hand to make this employment of a person happen for you.
Yeah.
You start off dealing with MOHRE, and that's the key person that you interact with. Now, MOHRE gives you approval. When MOHRE gives you approval, they contact immigration, and the immigration gives them a permit to enter the country.
Right.
MOHRE only gives you the permission to hire a person.
Got it.
And then immigration gives you the permit to let this person join and associate and be a resident, right?
Yeah.
Then you have an in-country process, which is done through what you know as, you call it, visa medical. This is done by the health authority and facilitated by them. And then the last one is you have what you call the ICP, which helps you get the Emirates ID. So all these institutions kind of work together to get you an employee legally connected with your business.
Yeah.
But for all labor relations, your primary port of contact is MOHRE.
Yeah. I feel like I'm having a lesson in HR, even though I've been doing this for so long. I'm asking these questions and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I knew how it was all connected, but I probably didn't stop to think that it's 4 separate organizations.
Exactly.
Right?
And if you think about the machine, the systems that go and support this, you have more entities that get involved. You have a PRO, or the businessman services. You have a typing center behind the scene.
Yeah.
You have a whole back-end system that facilitates this process.
Yeah.
And you wonder why it takes 4 to 6 weeks, because it's 4 organizations go hand in hand for you to start with the recruitment and end up with employment, the entire relationship.
I think this is especially useful for, businesses moving to the UAE.
Very
because
much.
In other countries or like outside of countries that you need, expat populations, the starting or the hiring process in someone starting is quite kind of, you can hire someone and get them to start almost immediately, right? But that's not necessarily the case here. A lot of employers get employees to start without getting a work permit or without getting a visa, and then they do that in parallel, which is not legal.
Yeah, it's definitely not advised, and it's definitely unlawful for you to recruit any resident, because they are all residents in some shape. You cannot hire any residents without a work permit of any sort. And if you're in free zone, you cannot hire a resident without giving them the free zone permit.
Got it. And so, kind of again, building on that, right? Like, we're talking a lot about documentation in terms of visas and immigration and things like that. And it kind of segues into my next question, which is, a lot of people also think, especially in the small business space, that HR is primarily like someone to do visas. And someone, it's very administrative.
Correct.
You know,
Okay.
so when I speak to them, especially because I speak to a lot of, potential clients, and you talk about HR, they're like, oh, no, we have someone doing our visas.
Yeah,
But
we have
there's
a PRO. So.
Yeah, exactly, right? But there's more to it.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Let's maybe dispel some common misconceptions about HR. Maybe let's take turns and do one each.
Okay, let's go for it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you want to start?
So for me, when it comes to like my interactions, mostly people think HR is recruitment.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say that one.
Oh, wait.
Okay.
So they say HR is about recruitment, which
Yeah.
it does have a very strong element of recruitment, but there's life beyond recruitment as well in HR. It covers the entire employee life cycle. So that's the first.
So people think it's about recruitment, but it's more than recruitment.
Yeah, and some people actually know a little more. They think it's about recruitment.
Yeah.
It's hiring and firing.
Yeah.
They forget what happens in the middle is there's a lot of activity.
Yeah. I feel like I need to think about this because you've just stolen my one. Okay, so one of the misconceptions that I hear when people, when I speak to clients or when I speak to potential clients or generally, they think HR is very just administrative. Like, I need, why do I need a policy? We're only a team of 10 people.
Yeah.
Or surely I don't need a policy. Or surely I have the MOHRE contract.
Yeah.
I don't need a company contract.
Correct.
So this is, you've dealt with a lot of these cases,
very
right?
much, yeah.
Maybe what's the difference between the MOHRE contract and the employment contract is, a good myth to dispel.
Yeah. So I think MOHRE did a great thing by having these documents in place because it protects everybody involved.
Yeah.
So that it's a facilitation tool to help in the absence of a contract. It never substitutes the need of an employment contract, which is purpose built or purpose developed for the business that you are working on. So always we have to kind of educate our clients sometimes on the value of or a contract developed for their business.
Yeah.
It helps not only just protect both the parties, which is the employer and the employee, but it also helps employees and employers get a system or a foundation to say, okay, what are my rights? What are my entitlements? So I am not, coming to my work and trying to figure these things out because I already have it set out. And then to help understand it further, okay, I have 30 days holidays. That's what my contract says. But when can I take it?
Yeah.
How much can I take it? When do I have to give notice to take it?
Yeah.
This is all what is covered more details in a policy.
Yeah.
Okay. Otherwise, your contract could be a 50, 60 page document and nobody in today's world is going to read it. And you create documents for the utility or the value it serves. So at the beginning, when you're starting, you're not going to read a 50, 60 page document. I don't know anybody even reads a manual for a gadget that they buy, and those are that thick, right? So it's the same behavior over here. So you create these policies to help understand how to manage that employment relationship with employees.
I think like when you have even 10 employees, right? Like being very clear on the fundamentals is very important. And when you say something verbally, not everyone understands it exactly the same way, and not everyone remembers what was said when it was said, right? So the policy kind of, you make that investment in time in creating that document, and you also think about operationally, how would you like to run your business? Because it's a policy is not just this is what we're going to do, but you have to think of like, okay, if I want my business to function and I have 10 people, how do I manage my operations in such a way that I can make, like, what needs to happen to be able to have a team available for my clients or customers? Yeah. So there's a more kind of holistic approach to why a policy is important. It's not just a question of like writing down, you have 30 days. Yeah. But like if 10 people 100%. Have 30 days, how would 30 days work across a year to make sure that you are fully you give your people rest. You are obviously compliant with the UAE labor law, and you have a thriving business. So there's a few things that need to get.
Yeah. And to add to that, right, there's a common thing that most business owners hear. You shouldn't be working in the business, you should be working on the business, right? And how do you elevate yourself from working in the business to on the business is, documenting your decisions or your intent for your business through a policy document or through some sort of a writing instrument, so that 10 people can go to refer to this before coming and escalating to you. So you've already taken away, not only you get headspace back in terms of decisions rather than having to make all 10 decisions of who can go on leave when. But also that headspace can now be focused on being on the business and growing the business. So this becomes that instrument.
But let's be honest, a lot of small business owners, although ideally you should be working on the business rather than in the business, when you are small, you do end up working in the business a lot, right? So this, I guess, you should think about, okay, I am going to work in my business. What do I want to spend my time doing?
Exactly.
Do I want to spend my time trying to, communicate to 10 different people that this is what we're going to do? And also 10 people would not all join at the same time. So they'll all join at different times. They'll all have different sets of questions. And the time and effort to repeat yourself so many times, it's easier to have something in writing that they can refer to. And you create, it's creating a one-time menu almost that, your customers can come and they can refer to, as opposed to every single customer coming or client coming to you to say what do you have to offer, and then you repeat everything.
And
right?
also I have also heard this argument, right, where owners think, employees still come to me on questions. So but if you think about, in the absence of this instrument that you have, how often will they come? Because you don't know what decisions they have made for themselves because they have not asked you about it. So you have no visibility of those issues that they have solved because you had these instruments.
Also, if you think about when they come to them, the answer can be, please refer to the policy.
Exactly. It's
it's simpler, right? As opposed to saying okay, you have so many days. When did you join? And this is where, so this is how it's calculated. So if you join in March of a year, then how many days of leave do you have? And if you have that all documented somewhere, it's almost like a self-help guide, right?
Exactly. And it's also both of y'all are referring to the same piece of paper. So it's not an employee thinking, or the employer just making it up as it comes along. So it shouldn't look like that, because they look at you as an employer, the person who's going to be, looking after their employment. They're not looking at you as you're looking at your business. This is a business. The orientation is different.
Correct. And, so HR policies is one, right? But also a lot of businesses have employee handbooks. And, we also get the question of, I have an employee handbook, do I need a policy? Or which one do I need? When do I need which document? So, how do we sort of help business owners answer the question of which one do they need? And, which one do they need without overkill?
So this one needs that typical HR answer, which it depends. We have to understand the business first to understand what sort of employee issues or relations or concerns that company might have. So there might be some places where you need both, or rather I would say three. You need a self-developed contract, not a MOHRE contract. On the back of it, you need policies and you need the handbook. And it entirely depends on how your business is set up, how your business is structured. You could be 10 people where 10 are doing the same thing and you're the boss, or you could have layers of organization and so on and so forth, right? It also is how much of culture do you want to bring into your organization, how you want to document your culture. Then you might need policies and handbook, where you are only serving to maybe give something to the employee so that they can refer to. In the absence of anything else, we would always say, yes, please have a homegrown contract and an employee handbook. But in a in the best way to set you up as a foundation, I think these three are quite core to
Yeah.
to a company. Can I go into the next myth?
No, I
Okay,
haven't
let's sit
finished.
on this
Okay.
one for now.
So again, how I explain it, right, is HR policies are usually for management of the employees, and employee handbook is for employees to know how they are able to function in that environment of the workplace.
Yeah, that's
so when you have managers, they can refer to the policies in the business to understand how to answer questions maybe that come from employees and how to navigate people management. But employee handbook is more about when like, okay, what do I do as an employee? So the employee handbook is more employee focused, and the HR policies procedures are more sort of management focused. Would you agree?
Yeah. And also, like, when we develop these documents, the language is also different.
Yeah.
You know, how we write policies versus how we write handbook. And this is exactly to serve that purpose, because the orientation is who's the user of this, who's the benefactor of this document. And the benefactor of an employee handbook, it's in the name itself, right? It's for employees.
Yeah.
So they are the ones that will benefit from this document. And for the business, it helps build trust through an employee handbook, because it says, look, we're transparent, and we're telling you exactly how, we want to manage you.
Yeah.
Want to grow you, and what we want to do when you want to take time off, etc. Policies give that added support and added strength to how you want to manage people. So when you're an entrepreneur, you're also a manager, a people manager, right? So these policies help you people manage your business.
Yeah.
And this is quite important. And a lot of, let's take it from a business point of view. If you're a small business, but you have big ambitions and you're looking for big organizations to, bid for and tender for, the questions are coming in over there where they say, how do you manage your people? What systems do you have? What policies do you have?
Yes, that's so true.
And when you have these documents, you can just present them. You can say, look, we have a very, strong HR foundation, HR framework.
Yeah.
This is our model. This is, whatever you want to call it. You can, name it, brand it, and it will, hold more in terms of like creating that employer brand as well.
Yeah.
And it is something that will give you that competitive advantage, because it genuinely shows that you nurture the talent who's going to deliver for your client.
Correct. So then if I kind of summarize so far, right? So for small business owners, even as little as 5 employees, what would you say are like the essentials to have in place? So one is an employment contract that is different than the MOHRE contract.
Correct.
Something that's more customized for the business, something that's more customized. There's clauses in there that are not necessarily covered by the MOHRE contract. So you're better protected. So that's number one. Then number 2 is to have an employee handbook at a minimum, because that will give very clear guidance to the employees as to how to operate, how to function, like what does the operations look like. HR policies is support for the management and how to manage people, the administration aspect of it. Also because lots of entrepreneurs are like subject matter experts. They're not necessarily people managers.
Correct.
So this would kind of help them with that, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So then, I know you want to like go into your...
No.
Okay, fine. Go into your third myth. No. I don't have one, but I have a question. So you can tell me your third myth.
So the third myth that I've heard is that, we don't need a HR because we have a system.
Oh, wait, I know another myth. Sorry. Okay, go on.
Okay. So we have an HRMS system, or we have a system. So we don't need HR policies. We don't need, HR. And to that, I have to say is like your HR system is going to reflect how you want your people to be managed. And if you don't know that, then the system doesn't work to your business benefit. It is a system. It captures the data. But what value is it adding by you doing, having a system that only gives you maybe not the full benefit of having a system?
But like build on that a little more, right? So a system comes to you, but as a business, to implement that system, you have to customize that system for your operation. In order to customize the system, you have to have thought of how your business operates or would operate. And if you create a policy, then you can literally just give it to the system customizer to say like, here, you just like customize the system, right?
So you've literally like taken words out of my mouth. So basically what
Yeah.
happens is people buy a system and they say, oh, you know, like it's so user friendly because when they see the demo, like here's the leave, here's the this and everything.
Yeah.
So they say, oh, we can do this.
Yeah.
And then when they have to do it, which is configure it to their business, they're like, oh, but how many leaves do we want to take? What is the carryover? Like, oh, we don't know that. Oh, what does your policy say? Oh, we don't have a policy. Oh, maybe then we just use the default of the system. That's how it falls into. And then you very soon realize, oh, I can't just use a system. I need to understand how I want to, you implement the HR policies and benefit from the system.
Yeah.
Otherwise, all employees can apply all at once. All employees can go for holidays during Eid holidays. How can your business run when everybody is on leave?
But all employees can go for holidays during Eid holidays, right?
Yes, that's public holidays. But if they add annual leave to it, then, it becomes like you have to find out whether this is operationally suitable. And if all...
So you're saying like...
this needs to be checks and balances.
Yeah. So for instance, if Eid holidays is 3 days and without the, the structure of a policy or some sort of structure, it can be like everyone's off for 10 days and then your operation suffers, right? Yeah.
Or as a business, you have to now then suddenly say, look, nobody can go, everybody can't go and leave at the same time. It's not the best time to say a message like that. But if the policy said that already, employees would deter from asking for leave, for all employees asking for leave all at the same time.
They would know when to, so they could plan it properly. Okay. So a myth that I have come across is that finance managers are HR.
Oh, yes.
And this is no offense to any of my finance colleagues out there. You have a very important job to do for sure. But just like we couldn't do finance work, finance may not be the best place to be able to do HR work, right? Like what they can do is do the payroll aspect, i.e. ensure that everyone gets paid at the end of the month. But, finance and HR are not the same. And there are ways to provide HR support to that finance team member also so that they can, sort of do their job, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, HR has, there is a linkage that extends from HR into finance, and payroll is that primary linkage because HR calculates how much needs to pay and finance pays it. But the calculation part is where the critical knowledge and the subject matter expertise sits with HR. Because they understand how compensation works. They understand, new employees, salary reviews, etc. So all of those compensation related work is to be done by the HR subject matter expert. Finance definitely understand numbers. That's their strength, right? But will they know how much to pay versus the entire team? Financially, they would be able to understand, like when there's 4 people, and you're looking at salary reviews, what is the right recommendation for salary review? How do you assess performance? How do you assess, somebody has just joined, somebody has just finished probation? All these scenarios you need to understand and manage. And if you're doing all of that and managing your finance work, which is your month end, your financial year, and all at the same time, it is overwhelming. But and it is overwhelming because this is not their core expertise. And this is where HR, it sits better with HR as their core expertise trying to do the work. They're very distinct. One manages people and one manages finance. They're not, the same asset that you're managing.
I think even more basic than that, just like, someone needs to understand from an operational perspective, was there any leave taken? And has that been accounted for? Were there any advances made? And like how you're recovering that from the employee? So there's from a business protection perspective, right? It also makes sense to have someone, a maker and a checker.
Exactly.
So the maker is HR, and then the checker becomes finance, and then they transfer it into the bank account. But again, since we're talking about basics, right? I want to again go back to the employment contract, which is the customized employment contract. What are some of the essential kind of clauses that you should include in the the contract from your perspective? And by the way, we have an Instagram post on the actual sections of the employment contract. I'll link it below in the show notes, but like maybe explain that to us a little bit.
So the employment contract, the labor law gives you guidance on what needs to be, what constitutes an employment contract. So those are like employment details, compensation details, benefit details, leave entitlement details. And also what happens when you have to terminate or separate from employment. So these are like the 5 core aspects of a contract, right? The other ones that also help and, support the business are talking about your, what is the code of conduct for your business? How are you going to manage confidentiality? How are you going to protect data? How are you going to protect your intellectual property? How are you going to protect yourself from solicitation or competition and so on? And those aspects are very important and critical to sustain those employment relationships beyond the employment itself. So it's the combination of these two, not these two, but like all these sections that makes that employment contract really strong and really resourceful to help with your business.
Amazing. So we've covered employment contracts, we've covered, HR policies. What are some essential HR policies to have in place now that we've talked about the importance of having them in place?
Okay, so the way to look at it, or the way I recommend, is to look at the employee life cycle, as well as the core HR elements that support that employee life cycle. These are the 2 buckets, I would say. So from an employee life cycle point of view, right from the time you recruit them to the time you separate from them, all policies should be covered. So these are like policies related to recruitment, onboarding, time management, leave management, separation, and also what happens when there is a dispute. So that's what we call disciplinary policy. What if an employee has a grievance against a team member or with so on? So you need to have a grievance policy. Then when you become a little larger organization and you have other business challenges, like how is manpower, like your staffing requirements. So you have like a manpower policy.
What about expenses? An expenses policy?
So expenses policy is also important when it comes to, how to manage these variable expenses that employees incur. A lot of it will be in the contract, but also in the employee handbook. And finance also has a little element because it has an impact on how they calculate the numbers. So that needs to be an integrated policy that needs to
Another one I can think of is travel policy.
Travel policy is very key because oftentimes what you think is like the travel policy, the perception of travel between employees are different.
Exactly.
And how they view travel also has a personal, so you need to set the conditions for travel for your business so that you know how to manage expenses that come out of that travel. So whether you want to offer, what sort of travel tickets, what is the booking procedure, and etc., how are expenses, reimbursed from there. Definitely. And the HR core aspects is like, as you grow the business, you need to look at how your organization is structured. What are the key design principles you want to, look at? Then your organization design policy comes in. So as a minimum, cover the employee life cycle. That would be your basic HR policies.
So just to kind of
recap,
right?
So
that's recruitment, onboarding,
leave management, time and attendance management, employee separation, and the 2 supporting ones to that would be disciplinary and grievance.
Okay.
So that's 8 policies in total.
Okay. And let's talk about, can you think of any instances, with all of that, where, and I know I can think of, but let's hear from you. Is where HR has kind of, when we've had clients call us to say, we have a problem, like, I really need your help, and so what happened? How did we help? And what was the outcome of that?
Okay, this one just came to mind. So this happened some couple of years ago, but it's a very relevant one even till today. So this company had an employee that resigned and left the next day.
Huh?
Yeah.
They had an employee.
So that employee decided to resign.
Okay.
And next day was...
So they didn't serve their notice period.
No. The company is based in Dubai.
Yeah.
This employee resigned while he was in Dubai and literally left the country the next day.
Okay.
And that, assuming that, my business is done, I've resigned and I'm, I don't have a notice or notice doesn't apply to me. So without looking at the contract, he just announced that he's resigning. Okay. So obviously we developed contracts for them and things some time back, and they came back saying, help us, like how do we hold this person to that? So we reviewed the case and we gave them the recommendation because that's what they came to us for. They said, okay, fine. And they ran with it. And, but that employee didn't work on that basis, right? So they went and consulted a lawyer. And then the lawyer suggested a different outcome where they would have to pay this employee everything so that they would not have to go to court. Because in the meantime, what has happened is the employee also felt like he was unfairly compensated for leaving the company because he was expecting to get gratuity and notice pay in lieu, etc. That's his understanding, not necessarily that was the company's way of communicating or anything. And then what happened is to avoid this proceedings with the court, the lawyer suggested to pay almost 4 times this person's salary. So again, they came back to us saying, can you please help us? Do you think this is right that the lawyers have recommended? So we reviewed the case once again because time has passed in the middle.
Yeah.
And we reviewed the case once again, and when we looked at all of the instances or trying to pull a case summary together, we realized nobody really has spoken to the employee to say, so all that employee was
everything's happening in the background. Everyone's being consulted in the background.
Yeah, and they're all like, talking in that way. And this employee felt like, okay, I left. Maybe it was something that was bothering, but no conversation had happened with this employee. So obviously although he has done what he has done was not supposed to be done, like as an employee obligation, but nevertheless it's done. And how do you, resolve the situation? So he went to somebody that would hear him, and that's how it was there. That's what we realized. And then so we started communicating with the employee and we started to say, look, this is what you should have done when you resigned, and this is why. Because you didn't do this, this is what happened. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Like I didn't realize, and I thought we could talk about it, or somebody would approach me and we could negotiate, and because I had to start this next job, etc., etc. So now the employer is in an awkward position, said, okay, can you speak to them? Because we really can't pay this much. This is going to hit our business bad. Yeah. So we're like, okay, we'll facilitate this conversation. And so we did. And we spoke to the employee and said, look, ideally, this is the situation, but because you still worked well as long as you worked with us, we want to recognize that. So we are offering you X, which is a number, right? And he said, okay, and just signed all the documents and sent it back and said, look, I just wanted to be heard and I just wanted to be, like recognized for whatever I'd done. I understand the circumstances. And he was very, very apologetic. Yeah. And so much so that, after signing this document, after settling the payment, we still had the visa cancellation and everything to be done. And because his wife was on his visa, we couldn't cancel his visa. He even sent his original Emirates ID to us to help us facilitate the cancellation, because that's how much trust we built with this employee. And the books have been cleaned with this client, and they're ever so grateful, because instead of paying 4 times the salary, they ended up paying a negotiated lesser amount. Yeah. And that saved them a lot of headache.
I remember this. What do you think could have, how do you think the client could have navigated that situation? How, because obviously, they had a contract. We created the contract for them, right? But yet they still found themselves in the situation. Where I'm kind of going with this, right, is even though we create these documents, but if employees are not onboarded correctly and there's no orientation process, and managers are not kind of taught how to manage their team, then you can have all of this in place, and there can still be a lapse in process, right?
Yeah. So the key word there was the onboarding part.
Yeah.
It's very important. You have all these documents. You have to orient the employees to this document. Just because you gave them a contract doesn't mean they've
read it thoroughly
or they understand
yeah.
it as well. They will sign it because they want to get on with their work and finish all the paperwork,
Yeah.
etc. But to truly understand the contract, that is where you do an orientation session. And also the manager has to be equally familiar with the process and the policies and so on. That relationship is nurtured. Another thing is communication is very key all along the process. The nature of this business, where the employees are constantly traveling for work, so they're not connected to a nucleus or a home center. They come from one side, they go to another side.
Yeah.
So they're working for the business, but they're more associated with their own work than the business itself. So it's always good to build that relationship and that connection, so they feel still connected, and a line manager plays a very key role. So the line manager needs to be developed so that they understand how to manage these remote workers in some ways. These are the OG remote workers, because they go from site to site, not necessarily like the way
I had
we have
another
it now.
term for them, but I can't remember. When I used to work with the airline, we had a word for the employees that were, the crew. Mobile workforce. That's the word. They're a mobile workforce,
exactly.
because they're literally not on the ground.
Yeah, they're not office bound. They are moving from site to site. So it's important that the line managers also know how to manage their team and how to build those relationships. And when such a situation happens, with the support of HR, take advice from us, because we have dealt with many of these situations, but keep a relationship with the employee as strong as possible so that you can navigate some of these situations better.
I always say the line manager employee relationship, that relationship essentially is your employee experience altogether.
Absolutely.
The company can say whatever, the owner can say whatever, but if there's a line manager in between, how that line manager treats you on a daily basis is your experience, right?
And I think that definitely should be one podcast theme. We talk about line managers and employee experience.
Yeah.
I think we can talk a lot about it.
A lot about it. All right. I think that's a pretty heavy episode, and hopefully a pretty informative episode for our first episode. We really hope you found these insights useful. If there's something more that you need clarifications on, please drop us a line in the comments. We'll link all of our social media handles on there. And if you haven't already, then please, do the subscribe, like, and share with your network. But specifically, if you found at least one insight useful, and if you know someone in your community, maybe another small business owner who would benefit from this, we would love, love, love if you share it.
Yes, please. And if you really enjoyed this episode, leave us a review, because this is our first episode and every review will count towards, reaching more audience.
Yeah, I hope we were able to do justice for our first episode.
I hope so too.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, and see you in our next episode.
Ciao.
As we wrap up today's episode, we want to extend a huge thank you to our sponsor, Pacific Prime Insurance Brokers. With 19 offices globally, Pacific Prime are an award-winning, trusted insurance partner for businesses and individuals requiring any type of insurance solution. They specialize in providing unbiased and reliable insurance advice to simplify your process of finding the right insurance solutions for your business and your employees. So whether you need comprehensive medical coverage or any other insurance solution, their 150-member team in Dubai alone are always ready to assist you. You can check the show notes below for a link to their website and a dedicated email address just for you to reach out to them.